It is time to dive into superhero snotgate, unsanctioned buffoonery, and those other rather weird reasons actors locked horns on a movie or TV set. Because I am Gareth here from Whatculture.com, and here are the 10 strangest reasons actors clashed on set.
Film and TV is cool, but you know what else is cool? Protecting your privacy online. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card if you sign up today. I'd make that deal. Damn good deal.
Number 10, Sylvester Stallone makes Dolph Lundgren cry over a grandmother remark, The Expendables. It didn't matter that the pair had starred alongside each other in one of the greatest boxing flicks of all time, and had been pals ever since. That still couldn't stop Sylvester Stallone from firing a rather bizarre insult his co-star's way when directing Dolph Lundgren on the set of the first Expendables feature. When recently appearing on In Depth with Graham Bessinger, Dolph revealed that Sly made him perform a scene 20 times, all whilst being quite harsh on the towering thespian, and yelling at him in front of the whole crew. But the words "my grandmother could do it better than that, what the F, what are you doing?" were what ultimately pushed Lundgren to tears before the cast and crew took their lunch break. Likely sensing he'd gone too far with this strange grandmother remark, the crazy Italian, as Lundgren put it, soon apologised for his aggressive directing style post-lunch, but let it be known that Stallone's odd grandmother comment nearly broke Drago. Number 9, Jenny Garth and Shannon Doherty take it outside after a skirt incident. Beverly Hills 90210. There was definitely a time there when Jenny Garth and Shannon Doherty couldn't share the same Beverly Hills 90210 set without things getting a little heated. In fact, as Garth would ultimately reveal on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen in 2019, the pair very nearly got physical and threatened to take things outside before security got involved at one point. Well, it all came about on the back of the pair teasing one another, with said back and forth then leading to Doherty suddenly lifting Garth's skirt up. Sure enough, the on-screen Kelly Taylor and Brenda Walsh were soon in each other's faces. After spending 14 to 16 hours locked in a soundstage every day during the filming of this 90s TV hit, it turns out that something as silly as a skirt tug was capable of tipping two warring co-stars over the edge. Number 8, Bryan Cranston was pissed over Larry Hankin forgetting his lines. Breaking Bad. Bryan Cranston's work as Walter White definitely established him as one of the finest thespians working today over the course of Breaking Bad's epic 5-season run. However, it was that drive to deliver the best work possible that ultimately led to one of Cranston's on-screen colleagues surprisingly feeling his wrath during the shooting of one particular Breaking Bad moment. As revealed by Old Joe actor Larry Hankin when eventually sitting down to talk with Cracked, during his second episode as the character, his lines kept disappearing from his mind in the middle of the scene where Joe sold the magnet to Jesse Pinkman and Walt. Rather than support his flapping co-star though, Cranston strangely went full Heisenberg on Hankin, telling him first to get your lines down, before following up with an intense "what's the matter with you, remember your lines" when he forgot them again. Needless to say, Cranston's unexpected fury didn't help matters. But after being reminded that all actors go up on their lines on occasion, his director's statement of "we're losing the light, so F Brian and let's just finish this scene" soon kicked him into gear. And he didn't forget those pesky lines again. Number 7, Sylvester Stallone isn't too happy with Richard Gere's chicken, the Lords of Flatbush. That man again, Sly, and his then Lords of Flatbush co-star Richard Gere had already gotten off on the wrong foot after the latter apparently got a little too into an improvised fight scene, with Stallone noting how the completely in-character actor was impossible to deal with, and their relationship took another turn for the worse during a rehearsal at Coney Island. With the future Rocky and Rambo star enjoying his lunch in the back of a Toyota, Gere soon rocked up with a half chicken covered in mustard, and after warning the future Golden Globe winner that a knuckle sandwich was heading his way if a drop of mustard leaked onto his pants, you'll never guess what happened. One greasy splash later, Gere had been elbowed in the face by an incensed Stallone. This entire bizarre scenario ticked off the leading man so much that the director was ultimately forced to boot Gere from the production. Number 6, Ryder Strong and Adam Scott share a weirdly awkward moment mid-hug. Boy meets world. Long before he was turning heads in everything from Parks and Recreation to Severance, Adam Scott landed a gig on a little show by the name of Boy Meets World. Despite appearing on the show as the rather cool Griff Hawkins for 4 episodes though, that still couldn't save Scott from a pretty awkward situation that went down on set all those years ago. As he'd recall to one-time castmates Danielle Fishel, Ryder Strong and Will Friedle in an appearance on the Pod Meets World Rewatch podcast, after taking in the final scene of Season 2 backstage, Scott joined the rest of the cast and crew in celebrating the finishing of the finale, only when he attempted to give Ryder a high five and a hug like everyone else had before him, he was soon met with a rather peculiar response from the Sean Hunter star. In a moment that haunted Scott for nearly 3 decades, Ryder apparently shoved this guest star away and gave him a wait a second who the F are you look before doing a runner. Scott even admitted to being surprised that he was called back to appear in Season 3 on the back of that strange exchange. But at least the gang were all able to sit back and laugh about the whole ordeal now. 29 years of Scott holding in the pain later. Number 5, Brian Cox finds Jeremy Strong's method acting effing annoying. Succession. Method acting isn't for everyone. For example, Jeremy Strong seems to be quite the fan of the approach, and feels he's at his best when fully inhabiting his role of Kendall Roy in Succession, whereas his co-star Brian Cox thinks this particular technique is effing annoying. Tell us how you really feel, Brian. And though the always outspoken, classically trained thespian would also explain to Town and Country that the star who plays his Logan Roy's son was a very good actor, the fact Strong won't break character after a scene has ended evidently perplexes Cox, and has led to him routinely calling out this American sugar, only he didn't say sugar. One specific moment during Season 3's final episode saw Strong produce a hell of a performance as Kendall, with Cox commending his displays throughout the scene, involving him confessing to accidentally killing a man to Shiv and Roman. However, seeing Strong still refuse to drop Kendall after the director had called cut very much frustrated the veteran thespian, with Cox claiming that he feels if he went somewhere else he'd lose it, but he won't. Simply put, the pair were involved in something of an odd cultural clash during their time on set, in Cox's words, with the Scottish star believing Strong should have simply just done his job and not identified with the character in the way he did. Number 4, Tommy Lee Jones couldn't sanction Jim Carrey's buffoonery, Batman Forever. When Jim Carrey learned that he'd be sharing a set with the legendary Tommy Lee Jones during the shooting of 1995's Batman Forever, the comedy sensation was understandably pumped. The same sadly couldn't be said for the man behind Harvey Dent's Two Faces in the Joel Schumacher flick though. But why was Jones so unhappy to be working alongside the star of The Mask and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective? Well, that was why. Jones simply could not sanction Carey's brand of buffoonery, telling him exactly that in the middle of a restaurant when his Riddler co-star popped over for a chat with his fellow Bat-villain. And despite Jones oddly losing it over Carey's on-screen antics, and perhaps not being the center of attention for a change, the comedy legend would still later note that he loves Jones during a chat with Howard Stern. Number 3, Claire Danes didn't appreciate Leonardo DiCaprio's pranks, Romeo and Juliet. Leonardo DiCaprio had quite the reputation for being one of Hollywood's biggest on-set prankers during his younger years, with Titanic co-star Kate Winslet notably getting a kick out of his shenanigans, and the pair ultimately bonding over their love of having a laugh during filming. Claire Danes seemingly didn't quite share that same love of pulling a fast one on your fellow actor, however. According to The Telegraph, the two were said to have clashed on the set of 1996's Romeo and Juliet, with Leo's constant pranks annoying his on-screen Juliet. And it appears that the Romeo star also wasn't Dane's biggest fan while shooting either. In fact, DiCaprio was said to have found her annoyingly reserved and uptight. Charming. To be honest, it's not hard to see why farting into a jacket before sneakily unleashing said toxic gas on his co-star, something he did to Winslet on the set of Titanic, would rub some folks up the wrong way. So it's probably a good thing Danes ended up turning down that sinking ship flick in the end. Otherwise, DiCaprio would have likely been decked for attempting those sort of strange and rather smelly antics. Number 2, Anthony Anderson's fart joke leads to tension with Tracy Ellis Ross on set. Read between the lines. And whilst on the subject of passing wind, a joke about that very act once resulted in a rather awkward TV set for Anthony Anderson and Tracy Ellis Ross many years ago. The eventual Blackish co-stars hosted the Vibe Awards together back in 2005, and it was here when Anderson saw the opportunity to have some childish fun with his co-host. After hearing a loud noise burst through the speaker briefly as the two made their way onto the stage. He asked Ross in front of the audience, "Tracy, did you fart?" The crowd loved the cheeky quip. Ross, not so much. But Anderson still didn't actually realize how much he'd offended his future co-star when making a guest appearance on her Read Between the Lines sitcom 6 years later. With the two being involved in every scene Anderson had in the show, Ross opted to walk off set and announced the stage is Anthony's whenever it was time for his close-up. Hilariously, Anderson just thought she was being ridiculously respectful in the moment, and it was only when the two began working together on Blackish that he realized she actually didn't want anything to do with the guy who'd made a farting joke at her expense in front of a live crowd. Can't really blame her. Thankfully, the pair laugh about the strange reasons for that early tension today, but it's clear from this list alone that a ton of on-set drama could have likely been avoided if blokes didn't have the sense of humor of a 10-year-old. Number 1, Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany clash over snot. WandaVision. After spending a ton of time together on set during the making of everything from Avengers Age of Ultron to Infinity War, it's incredible to think that Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany have never once had even the smallest argument. Or at least that was the case before the pair locked lips during the making of their Disney Plus hit series WandaVision. Bettany was fully made up as Vision as the two lovebirds engaged in a kiss during one particular scene. But once Olsen pulled away from her purple co-star, she soon realized she wasn't just wearing some of his glittery makeup. Bettany's snot was actually clinging onto her post-smooch. Lovely. Rather than simply giggle at this bizarre incident though, Olsen's request for his makeup artist to bring him a tissue didn't go down well with her fellow longtime MCU star. Bettany insisted that said snot was actually Olsen's, and so the two genuinely ended up having a very real argument over whose mucus was trying to steal the spotlight. And with Bettany still insisting to the one show in 2021 he was innocent during the events of Snotgate, it appears the duo still haven't fully resolved their silly runny nose drama.